All right, we are going to talk about, in this class for the 9 weeks, American government. It is not a comparative government class. It is all about American government. Now, we will compare and contrast as opposed to other types of government philosophies, but this is an American government class. Therefore, we will teach it from the perspective of it being a good thing. When we get done with this class, you will see why it is a good thing, and perhaps, arguably, I am biased because I am an American and I have studied this for a long time, do believe it is the best system ever created by man. It is not perfect, but it is the best system that we have on earth. But before we study government, you first have to ask the question, what is civil government? That should be the first question that you always start when you're investigating something, is you start with a question. What is civil government? Does anybody want to give a try at explaining what civil government is?
Like something not higher up there, but like something more like civil.
Okay, what does civil refer to? Because we have two words in here that we probably need to define a little bit. Civil and government.
We are a civilization. No, that's like
You're onto something.
I would say like it's not higher rank.
Almost like a group of like a. I keep wanting to call it like a civilization, which is an actual part of government.
What do you, okay, keep going with that. You're on to something because you're seeing the root word here, right? Civil. Because you get civilization comes out of the root word civil too.
Civil like means fair, like act civil,
Act civilized is what that means. That's short for civilized. So again, back to the word civil. Say again. Like an equal government? Sometimes, but not directly. Civil government. We already said civil, the root word of civilization is civil. So we're dealing with the civilization of, or put it the other way around, government of civilization. We read it, unlike the Greeks. The Greek would say government civilized. We say civil government. Okay, if you ever read the ancient Greek, when it's translated from Greek to English, it's like hearing Yoda speak. Yoda speaks just like the Greeks would. Instead of saying red truck, you start with, it's a truck and it's red. In English, we start with what it is. It's civilization of government. When it's really what it should be is government that is civilized.
That's the definition?
No, not yet. What we're doing is parsing what these words are. Because we have a government in this classroom. I have classroom governance in this class. Typically, it's called classroom management. But the real word is, or words that should be used, is classroom governance. Mr. Hale has school governance. Mr. or Dr. Neville has school district governance. That is why I make a distinction for you to understand the type of government we are referring to. Okay, because there's lots of different types of governance. You have governance over your own lives. The government, well, we're going to find out about what the government is, because that is another discussion. But in general, what we're saying here is this: what is the civilized government or government civilized? What is that? That's what we're going to attempt to explain here. So one of the examples that I have already talked about, how the teacher has classroom governance over its pupils, over their students. The principal has governance over his teachers. The city has governance over the city operations. The law of gravity has governance over gravity. It is rules, absolutely. Rules and control. That'd be one way to look at it. The sovereign has governance over its subjects, whether it's the king or the president. Now, I'm using the word president generically, not in the sense of the United States. That's a very different position than president in general. Government, think of it as a math formula. Influence and power over someone or something is government. Influence and power over someone or something is government. Now, you don't have to write this next one down. It's in a very important quote. You might want to write it down, but I'm not going to require you to. It is a fundamental premise that our government system is based on. And it describes in a way that I think we're going to address, I don't think today, I think it's tomorrow, the fundamental problem with humanity. If men were angels, no government would be necessary. If angels were to govern men, neither external nor internal control of government would be necessary. James Madison, the founder of, or the writer of our Constitution. If men were angels, we wouldn't need a government. But since we are not angels, and since angels do not govern us, we need a form of government that restrains us.
What do you mean restrains us?
We'll talk about that. Good question, Jappe. That's a very good question. You do not need it, but it's actually a good quote for you to be able to use in your life to explain why we need government. We as human beings, why there needs to be a government system. What do you think of when you hear the word angels? Let's parse this apart a little bit. James Madison, one of the most brilliant men in that Constitutional Convention who established our country, says, because we are not angels. Why did he use the word angels? What do you think of when you hear the word angels? Perfect, right? Holy, maybe? Actually, if you read the Judeo-Christian Bible, there's only one thing in the world that's holy. In fact, so holy, it is repeated 3 times. It's the only place in the Bible that the Jewish writers ever repeat something 3 times. It'd be like us putting exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. When the Jewish writers write something 3 times in a row, that's called the superlative degree. It is the most important, and there's only one place in all 66 of those books, if you're using the Protestant Bible. I don't remember how many the Catholic Bible has, how many books they have there, but they have more. It's the only place, and they're referring to Yahweh as being the Holy One. But human beings see angels as probably the second level of holiness. They're the only pure beings, according to the Judeo-Christian teachings, that can be seen or can be in the presence of God. And even then they have to have their faces covered. The cherubims. But you're right. The overall picture he's painting us is goodness. Mankind is not angels. And therefore, we need some kind of form of government. This you will need. And it did not show up. Oh, there we go, at the bottom. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that was down there. Government, first and primary job. Yes, will be on the test. You will have to recall this many, many times in this class. I'm going to keep asking you, what is the first and primary job of government? Protect our natural rights. Yes. First and primary job of government. Not to provide health care, not to provide welfare or housing or schooling or anything else that we get today. Government's number one job is to protect our natural rights. By the way, the only country that's ever believed that from its beginning is ours. And it's really the thing that separates us from any other country, is this belief right here. Now we're going to address what natural rights are in a little bit, because that should be your next question, Mr. Moffat. What is natural rights? Because I assume most of you, if not all of you, have never heard of that. We will be addressing that. It's important that you understand what natural rights are and that it is government's job to protect those rights. Yes, Harlan. Yes, those are natural rights. What's our first natural right, Harlan? Nope. Nope. There you go. There's the three top natural rights in our government form of system in our country. Life is number one. Government's first job is to protect your life. The second job is to protect your liberty. Now, it says in our Declaration of Independence, the third right, and remember they do say in there, there's others, and there are others, these are the three that they point out, it's the pursuit of happiness. That originally was property. It is recognized that property is your third natural right that must be protected. When we get to the Declaration of Independence, we will break that apart further to understand why it says happiness versus pursuit of happiness versus property. Understand, without government, you end up with anarchy. However, anarchy never stays in anarchy. No nation has ever remained in anarchy for long. The people, it will get so bad. Think about, how many of you know about The Purge, the movie The Purge? Yeah, it's still popular among your age group. The Purge, while everybody wished they could do the purge, some reason they think they're the ones that's going to survive the 24 hours. Likelihood is you will not. The purge would be 7 days a week with no end. You are not, as a result of that kind of situation, you will beg for a dictator to take over and get things under control. Anarchy always leads to dictatorships, with no exception in world history. Under anarchy, without government, no citizen's natural rights would be safe. And you would not be able to protect them. Physical force and brutality would trump over justice and reason every time. Might makes right under anarchy. Because I'm bigger than you, I can do what I want to you. Who wants to live in a society like that? Nobody in their right mind would. You have to have a form of government to live under. Now, true enough, one thing for sure is you are going to have a form of government to live under. The only question is it going to be a good government or is it going to be a bad government? And in our country, our system of government allows us to make that decision. Every time we go to the voting box, we get to decide whether we're going to have a good government or a bad government. We'll get more into that later in this class. So, when you have good government, the predator class of people will be restrained and brought to justice. The movie The American Sniper, if you read the book American Sniper, Chris Kyle, His dad taught him, and it's a good analogy, there are three kinds of people in this world. You have wolves, you have sheep, and you have the sheepdogs. What's the job of the sheepdog? Protect the sheep. That's right. He's seen himself as the sniper overlooking the Marines. He was a Navy SEAL, Navy sniper, so he traveled with the Marines. His job was sheepdog, to protect his Marines. He's seen himself as a sheepdog to protect the American sheep. Those who don't go into, by the way, only about 1%, if that, ever go into the military anymore. Now they're even having a hard time finding people who's qualified to get in the military. Can't pass the ASVAB. The predator class is what I refer to as, you can see, if thinking of it as a wolf works for you, great. The government is the sheepdog. Their job is to protect the rest of us from the wolves. Now, we have a fundamental problem with mankind. Now, let me reiterate. I'm going to be reiterating this all the next 2 quarters you're with me. I'm not telling you what you have to believe in the ways of theology. You have to understand, however, that the people that developed our Constitution, the people that founded our country, the people that lived before us in Western civilization did believe in this. And they acted in accordance to their belief. There's this fundamental problem with humanity, and it's summed up in 2 words, 2 Latin words, libido dominante, the lust to dominate. This phrase came out of St. Augustine's writings. Believe it was the City of God. If you ever get a chance, it is considered one of the Western classics. If you ever get a chance to read that, I highly advise you to do so. But in there, he refers to libido dominante being the problem of mankind. And this came from, it originated, this defect in humanity, this problem that we all have as human beings, originates from what is theologically called the fall of man. In the Garden of Eden, you have 2 individuals, Adam and Eve. They could eat anything they wanted, except for one fruit. We don't really know what it is. Often it's portrayed as an apple. We don't know what it is. Even the Jews, who this story comes out of the Jewish heritage, they don't know what it was, but it was the one thing reserved for God. Eve was deceived by the serpent, that we would refer to as Satan, that she could eat that and be like God. Being greedy that she was, oh really? She eats and then convinces him to eat. That ushered in what is called the original sin in humanity. And because of that original sin, human nature become corrupted. Corrupted with evil. Because of this defect in humanity, this evilness within human nature, we have a tendency, we as human beings have a tendency to want to tell the people how to live. And better yet, take what you have if you have something I want. That is referred to as libido dominante, the lust to dominate over someone else. That typically goes, when we're dealing with governments, goes into the form of dictatorships. In our country, we don't see so much of that, but we see taxation as a way to dominate over us. We'll get more into that later. But understand, this is another test question, by the way. I'm going to ask you, what is the defect of humanity? What is the problem with humanity, and therefore we need government? You're going to explain libido dominante. You must watch out for libido dominante in all of your politicians, and all of the judges, and anybody who has control over your life. Over me. I have the power This is what's scary, ladies and gentlemen. One teacher has the power to stop you from graduating. I can decide, for a large part, the future of you. If I decide to abuse my power as a teacher and allow La Vita Dominante to run my life, you won't graduate. What do you think about that? Maybe some of you have already experienced teachers who have a problem with La Vita Dominante. I remember in college, I had my advisor told our class, there are two types of people that go into teaching. One who actually wants to do something and help, and then the other type, he said, unfortunately, is the majority of them want to go into teaching so they can control other people. That's pretty scary to think about. But that comes right out of this idea, La Vita Dominante. Watch out for that. Watch out for it in your own life when you get in a position where you can control things. You've got, and here's the thing, when you get into power, when we do our field trip to the State House and Representative gives us her tour, she will talk about that. How the first time she walked in there, in fact, the guy who gave her the tour when she was being introduced to her job, he said, put your hands on this pillar. We're downstairs. She said, on this pillar, feel the power in this building. She said it scared the crap out of her, realizing she represents, I think, 4,500 people in her district. She has the power to control. She could destroy lives by her vote. And she goes, the thing is, most of the people at the State House, they are sucked into that power. That's why term limits is a good idea. Because you get into that kind of power, you forget who you really represent, and you start looking out for number one, you. So, it's to me, it's a quite incredible story to have her tell it. She had no idea what these two words were. We explained it to her, I don't know, last fall. She goes, oh my gosh, that's exactly what happened here when I put my hand on this pillar. It was a pretty cool lesson. The kids were like, holy cow, that's Mr. Muffin does know what he's talking about. All right, the word, I'm going to try not to read, I don't want to kill you by PowerPoint by reading what you can read yourself. The way the word government is used signifies the organized means and power that a state or nation employs to the purpose of securing the rights of the people. So it is how that word government is used will tell you how they operate in securing those rights, or worse yet, not securing those rights. So when you hear different words like democratic socialism, communism, Marxism, Nazism, fascism, statism, dictatorship, monarchy, limited monarchy, parliamentary monarchy, then though every one of those things should come to mind once you learn it, you will learn it in this class, once you learn it, should tell you the type of government you're dealing with and how they operate regarding rights or no rights. Just a quick question. How many of you think we live in a democracy? Raise your hand. How many of you think we live in a democracy? Come on, quick hands. Stop writing for a minute. I appreciate you wanting to write, but quick hands. How many of you think we live in a democracy? How many of you heard that we have lived in a democracy? Okay. So you guys have heard it. Do you not believe it? None of you raised your hands. Do we or do we not live in a democracy? We do not? Okay. Over here? Then why do they keep saying we are or we do? Almost all of you raised your hand saying you've heard it. Well, Natalia's right. We do not live in a democracy. You'll find out here in a few more slides if we have time today. But you will hear this and you will see this on your citizenship test. that we are a democracy. That is not true. That is not, and I'll tell you right now, we'll get there. You'd better pray that you do not ever live in a democracy. We'll get there. It all comes back to La Vita Dominante. But we'll get there. All right, do not write this down. Do not write this down. I am going to read it to you. Listen to it, though. This is referring to worldview. Remember what I said. You do not have to believe the theological perspectives of our forefathers. I'm not asking you to believe it. But we have to understand they believed it and they act in accordance. In fact, every one of you have a theological worldview. Even an atheist, which is a religion, has a theological worldview. Based on that worldview, you make all other decisions in your life. Without exception, everybody in the world makes decisions starting with what they believe from a theological perspective. And this author, Russell Kirk, if you ever want to read a good book on the foundation of the American order, the book, The Roots of the American Order, is a great one to read. But he writes on this, and he says, quote, all the aspects of any civilization arise out of the people's religion, its politics, its economics, its arts, its science, even the simple crafts are the byproducts of religious insights and a religious cult. For until human beings are tied together by some common faith and share certain moral principles, they prey upon one another in the common worship of the occult. And they're not referring to the occult as in witchcraft, but as in a religious practice. A community forms. At the heart of every culture is a body of ethics, of distinctions between good and evil. And in the beginnings, at least, those distinctions are founded upon the authority of revealed religion. Not until a people have come to share religious beliefs are they able to work together satisfactorily, or even to make sense of the world in which they find themselves. Thus, all order, even the ideology order of modern totalitist states, professing atheism, cannot come into existence had it not grown out of general belief in truths that are perceived by the moral imagination. Everything that we have first started with a religious belief, with a theological perspective. So, again, I'm not telling you have to believe this stuff. I'm telling you what we're going to learn comes out of the people's theological perspectives. Okay?